Replacing the TPRV, for example, once this thing starts leaking, it never goes back 100%, and then this needs to be replaced. And having a technician come out here for parts and labor, it's going to be 250, 350 bucks. That's the cost of doing your service inspection anyway. So having that cushion tank drained on a regular basis will prevent that expense.
Hey everyone, it's Lawrence Mack here for Remax Realtron. I'm here with Michael Schmidt from Housemaster Home Inspections. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Lawrence?
I'm doing awesome. Today, Michael's just going to talk about heating systems, and specifically we're going to talk about the boiler that goes towards the radiator and that type of heating system. So take it away, Michael.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having me, Lawrence. What we're looking at right here is a gas-fired boiler for a radiator heating system. Many people, I would say by far, in a way, most people have a gas-fired furnace, which pumps out hot air as part of the furnace, and then it also has an air handler component that spits out cold air from the air conditioner in the summertime. But there are a fair amount of people that still have the old radiators in their homes. And so oftentimes you find these in older homes, but some people, even in newer homes or newly renovated homes, they like the heat that comes from a radiator system, and that's what I'm going to be discussing with you today. So right here, as I mentioned, we have a gas-fired boiler. You can tell it's gas because here's the gas line coming in. One of the things that I look for is to make sure it has a drip leg when we come out. That's to make sure that any debris in the gas line doesn't get into the boiler itself and damage any of the components inside. One of the things I take a look at first and foremost is I'm just looking at the boiler itself, making sure that it has all the right pieces. One of the things I'm looking for is to make sure that it has a temperature pressure relief valve. That's so in case the system gets too much pressure in it, then it has somewhere for that water to go. I have a bucket here. It is empty, so that's good. That bucket's there just more for as a precautionary measure in case that there ever was water to come out. Usually it just kind of leaks. It doesn't actually like spray out really hot and heavy, but so it can catch that so it doesn't damage your floors or the surrounding areas. Along there, sorry, I just had an alarm go off while I'm talking here. One of the things that I also look for is, here's the pressure gauge. So as I mentioned, you don't want the TPRV to let water out. And one of the things you can look for is the pressure in the system. Now, a boiler system or radiator system is a low pressure system. The water in there is not under high pressure like it would be for our potable water, like the water that comes out of our sink or bathtub or shower. So it's pretty low pressure. You can see on the gauge, I want to be keeping it basically between the 10 and 20 PSI range. If it's getting over that, then that could be leading for the TPRV to spray water out. Now, if you didn't have that, or even if you do, and you're seeing water dripping there, that is a bad sign, because you have to imagine all these fittings in the system where all the pipes meet at different junction points, different joints. That is a potential for a leak. So if this gets under too high pressure, you could start to see leaks at some of these joints. Okay. Now, one of the things that home inspectors look for as we go throughout the basement or even visible areas where the radiators are, we're looking for signs of rust, signs of leakage that could be in the system. Now, many of this stuff is hidden behind walls and ceilings, so we can't look at it, but what we can look at, we try to look at. Now, another important component of the system is the circulation pump, which is right here, this red guy. So that the boiler is what heats the water. This is what distributes it throughout the system. Okay, so I want to look at this. I want to see what kind of shape it's in. Some of these things are self-oiled or self-lubricated. Other ones require lubrication once a year. I always make sure to have my boiler serviced once a year. And that's both to clean the internal components, but also to oil the circulation pump and make sure that everything is operating smoothly so you don't wind up in the middle of winter cold, okay? Other things I'm looking for before I get inside the pump or inside the boiler, sorry, I'm looking for the venting. This is where it's a gas-fired furnace, so that, or gas-fired boiler. So that means that it's lighting a fire inside that boiler, and that combustion air, just like with a car's tailpipe, needs to go somewhere. This is where it goes, okay? It's gonna go out, and that terminates into a chimney and goes out the top of the house, okay? There's different boiler systems. They may be direct vent or power vented. This one is power vented, but it vents out a metal vent line through the chimney rather than a plastic vent line out the side of the house or something like that maybe you've seen in your own home. So that's very important. So I have actually put my hands on some of these vent pipes in the past at homes that I've inspected, and they just crumble, either from age or from backdrafting. It develops condensation, rusts out the actual metal in the pipe, and that thing just flakes apart. And you can imagine that that's a really bad thing to happen in your house if that's basically a tailpipe going into your basement or your activity room or your kid's playroom or something like that. Very, very dangerous. Which, by the way, public service announcement, I'll just mention, you should always have a carbon monoxide a detector on every level of the home, particularly when you have gas-fired appliances, to make sure you don't end up with a carbon monoxide issue. It could be deadly, okay? Other things that I'm looking at even before I go inside the boiler itself, I'm looking for the cushion tank. So this right here is the cushion tank. It is meant to relieve pressure from the system. So it's basically a big empty tank. As the water gets heated up, hot water expands. It needs somewhere for that pressure to go. So this cushion tank relieves that pressure. Little water might flow in, little water might flow out. Now it's important to relieve the pressure of this once a year. That's another reason why you want to have your boiler serviced once a year. As part of that, the technician, he'll be emptying this tank, okay? You basically want to empty it at least once a year. Sometimes you may even want to empty it twice a year. I find with my particular system, I like to empty it out at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season, okay? And typically, if you have someone come out and do that, they'll do that for you. They can even show you how to do it, so then you can do it on your own if you're a handy person. It's not a very difficult thing to do. It's just time consuming, depending on how much water might get into the cushion tank. Now, once I make sure that all of the various important components are present, I'm going to be taking a look at the boiler itself. I look at the data plate, which is right here on the top in this particular model. I can tell you that this is was from 1997 by looking at the serial number. So it's about 23 years old. It's getting towards the end of its life. That doesn't mean that it's going to die tomorrow or anything. That's another reason why you want to have it serviced. Now I took this, the cover plate off a little bit, but it is connected to some wiring down here, so I'm not going to completely dislodge it. But as part of a home inspection, I will be, shining a flashlight in there, taking a look at the burner, making sure that there aren't any signs of rust, things that could be associated with backdrafting or breakdown of the components on the inside of the boiler, to make sure that the system is both running efficiently and safely. All right, and then of course I'm going to run it. I'm going to turn up the heat at the thermostat, and then I'm going to make sure that it actually delivers hot water throughout the system. So I'm gonna feel the pipes. I'm gonna feel that there's hot water going through there. This pump will take it up through here, and then it'll go through the system, and then it will come back, and it will go through this second pipe. So it comes out here, goes up, circulates back, and comes here. So this will warm up first. This pipe will be cold, and then it will get warm later, okay? So I'm going to take you upstairs in just a minute and show you a radiator and how to actually bleed, what's called bleed the rads. This is where air develops in the radiator, and you need to relieve pressure, both for the health of the system, but also for the efficiency of the system. But before I do, I want to point out one thing that I notice in basements of old homes here in Toronto, and show you one thing that I'm looking at for a home inspector that often gets overlooked by home buyers. But before I do, Lawrence, do you have any questions about the boiler before I leave the boiler room?
Well, specifically, I guess, is there any other maintenance that you could do here that you wouldn't normally when you do an annual service call? Ignoring that, like, is there anything else that you should look for when it looks like maybe something's failing or something like that? Just as a homeowner?
Well, I think I pointed out some of the major things. Some things would kind of go over the head of the normal home owner. But like I said, things like looking for leaks right here on a regular basis, seeing if there's a little pool of water in that bucket. Oiling this is something you can definitely do as a home inspector if you know how to do it and how much oil should be there. Emptying that cushion tank is another thing that's very easy for a homeowner to do once they learn it. But I would say that it's something that you want to talk to a pro about, either a service technician or your home inspector, to make sure that that it's done right, because you could turn off some of these valves here. And for example, one problem I'm thinking about is, say you want to empty the cushion tank, you actually turn off the water to that cushion tank and temporarily while you drain the tank. If you don't open that valve up again, then that built up pressure isn't going to the cushion tank. So that could lead to that pressure problem I was discussing. So you want to know how to do it right.
Okay, so it really does sound like you have, like, this is one of the things that you highly recommend once a year. Get a professional in to take a look at your whole system, or else you might have issues down the road. Like, this is, sometimes people, you should get someone to service it once a year, once every 2 years, and I'm sure some homeowners like, I didn't just spend the money. But this is probably a very important system that you feel strongly that they really should get a professional.
Absolutely, absolutely. Replacing the TPRV, for example, once this thing starts leaking, it never goes back 100%, and then this needs to be replaced. And having a technician come out here for parts and labor, it's going to be $250, $350. That's the cost of doing your service inspection anyway. So having that cushion tank drained on a regular basis will prevent that expense. Like I said, the expense of having this fall apart, your vent line deteriorate, that could be deadly. This item right here is an easy $500 to $750 replacement for your circulation pump. So you want to have that stuff oiled regularly so it doesn't break down. I will tell you that these guys, they can break down even when you do maintain them, and to replace it, it always stings the pocketbook. so having it last as long as possible is money well spent with the service inspection.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have about the boiler. I guess if you want to go look at the radio.
Well, let me show you one thing. So as I mentioned, we have the pipes. It's coming from the tank up, out. You can kind of see how it hits the wall over here. I'm going to go on to the other side in the finished part of the basement. So you can see it's kind of coming through that wall right there, and then it's extending and it's going through to the other side of the wall. And that's when it leads up to the side of the house, and it's going to hit some of the first radiators in the system. Here's one place where it comes up into the living room of my house, and that one at the back, it's going to say the kitchen at the rear of the house. But here's the thing. Do you see any radiators, Lawrence?
No, I do not.
No. So this is one of the key issues that I find, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it depends on the purpose of this basement. If this basement is going to be an occasional like guest room like we have here, or a bit of a playroom with an Xbox set up for the kids and stuff like that, not a big deal for there not to be heat down here. In fact, the boiler room and these pipes themselves will kind of generate a little bit of heat that will give some ambient heat to this basement. But I can tell you that that it's quite common for basements in downtown Toronto not to have any radiators in the basement. And if you're planning on using this year round, we do live in Canada and it gets quite cold, okay? So in the darkest days of February, it can get quite chilly down here. And so you'll see we have kind of supplemental heating supply down here for my daughter with her dollhouse and things. So so these are some of the things that you'll want to know about as a home buyer. Not necessarily you're not going to buy the house because it doesn't have radiators in the basement, which is quite common, but that if you are planning on using this long term, you may want to consider putting the radiators in, or you may want to have some kind of supplemental heat, either as like a temporary space heater like this, or a more permanent baseboard electrical heater or something like that. Okay, so that's something that's quite common in downtown Toronto is no radiators in the basement. And that's something I always look for. Now, I'm upstairs right now, and I'm going to show you what the radiators do look like. So then I can show you both some of the things I'm going to look for with the radiator, and then also some of the maintenance items for a radiator system. Okay. All right, so here I am. As I mentioned, one of those radiators leads to the kitchen. I'm walking through my kitchen on the second floor. So here I am in my dining room, and here's a radiator right here. So you can see there's a couple things with the radiators. You have a knob down here. That's the knob that actually allows water to inside and out of the radiator itself. So again, water's coming in. It's going through the radiator, and then it's coming back out on this pipe, the second one, and returning back to the boiler to be heated again, okay? So you can turn off the radiator right here. I treat radiators, particularly in old homes, you can tell this is has kind of a nice look, but it's an old radiator, and these valves tend to fail, okay? They have a little rubber component inside. It will wear out, and that can lead to leaks. And you might even see down there's maybe been a little leak. I'll tell you what happened. My son stood on this with his foot when he was probably 6 or 7, and even the weight of a 6 or 7-year-old bent the pipe enough that this leaked at one point. So what I find is that if you're not regularly using these valves, they wear out. So if you are not periodically turning them on and off throughout the course of the year, and remember, you have multiple radiators, like a radiator per room, or some rooms have multiple radiators, and you're not doing that regular maintenance of turning it on and off, then it is better to leave them on or off, okay? So if you have some rooms, you don't need any radiator in there, you don't need any, it's just ambient heat of the house is heating the room itself, then I would just leave it off. If you have it on, leave it on all the time. But to turn it on and off, you're probably going to lead to a leak. And to repair that leak, again, they have to drain the entire system just to even replace this little itty bitty valve, or that component, that rubber component in that valve. It's going to be $300, $350. Okay.
Michael, I was hoping, can you zoom in a bit on the pipe down there? I'm just curious, just to see it a little bit closer.
Yeah. So this is the valve I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's like a rubber component in here. As you close the valve, it presses against the component. Well, that will crack, and then you'll get a leak that comes out here. Okay. And came onto the floor. All right. Okay. And so like I said, what I recommend to my clients is leave them on or leave them off. Okay, that's the best thing. Or more modern radiators, they're more resilient. They're built better. They've developed better components. But these older radiators, either on or off. Okay. Now the second thing I want to point out, different valve, is right here. Now this is the bleed valve, okay? Oops.
Let's try that
Sorry.
again. It's okay. We'll just do it.
I dropped my phone. Sorry about that. So I dropped my phone. So you can see there's a little screw here, and there's a little, you can kind of see there's a little area right there for a relief. When you open that out, air and water will come out here, okay? So as I mentioned, as water will evaporate, it will lead to air within the system. These radiators can become full of air instead of water. And therefore, they won't deliver heat to the radiator or throughout the house. Also, it won't allow water to properly flow through the system, and that could lead to damage of the system itself. So periodically, again, I recommend at least once a year, but what I really recommend is at the beginning and end of each season, you should bleed the rads, okay? And so to bleed the rads, you either, some of these have a little knob. This one, as I showed you, again, I'll show you a little closer, it's for a screwdriver. It's controlled by a screwdriver. You open that valve and you let the water out. As soon as you see water come out of here, bring a sponge, bring a paper towel or something. As soon as you see water, just close it right again, okay? And then that will allow water. Usually you only have to do that at 1 or 2 radiators throughout the system. Usually it's the air will travel, air is lighter than water, so it will travel to the highest part of the house. So you go to the top, most rooms, you find the radiators and you bleed them there. Usually you don't have to bleed them on lower levels. But occasionally if they do develop water because of the way the system is configured or whatever it might be, you may have to do it at different units. But that's one, again, maintenance item that can be done by a homeowner with a little bit of knowledge. But that is something that's important to do at least once a year to make sure that the system is operating properly.
Sounds great. And this is, I don't know much about radiators. So are all the radiators connected into one giant circuit, basically?
In this home, yes.
Okay.
But not all homes. So some homes are what's called multi-zoned homes. And so where I showed you the circulation pump for my system, it just has one pump. Some systems have multiple pumps that are controlled by multiple thermostats. My thermostat, for example, is, let's see, right over here, okay? Not a good place for a thermostat, by the way, because it's in a kitchen, but it's what we have. So it's the way the house was designed. So, but other homes may have multiple lines that run to various parts of the house, and then they have a thermostat on each area of the house. I would say usually it's done by floor or by addition. So maybe front of the house has one thermostat. The back of the house, which was an addition, has a second thermostat. Other ways you could do it is like first, second, third floor, or basement. You can imagine sometimes basement is cooler or warmer than other areas of the house, depending on the season. So the basement may have one thermostat. The second and third floor may have another one. So in that case, those are controlled on different lines, run with different circulation pumps.
And you mentioned before that the radiators versus the forced air. Obviously the forced air are typically in the newer homes, and the radiators are in the older home. Are there any other disadvantages or advantages that you can see of the radiator versus the forced air?
Well, advantages, disadvantages. Some people, they like, well, here's the first major disadvantage of a boiler system is you don't have air conditioning. Or if you do have air conditioning, it's a separate system that runs supplemental to the radiator system. So those radiators, again, I'll point it out to you, they only heat up. So they only heat up. They don't cool down, okay? So if in Canada, it's not such a big deal. In Toronto, we have maybe 2 weeks out of the year where you really need air conditioning, depending on who you are. I can live without air conditioning, okay? Or we put them in our windows. We have like window units. So for that couple of weeks, maybe month out of the year where you need air conditioning. But that's the big drawback to a radiator system, is it does not have the vents for air conditioning. Now, that being said, there are plenty of homes that have radiators, but they either have a secondary ducting system for forced air. That forced air just serves only air conditioning alone, no heat. Or you have the mini split units that you may have seen, like the Mitsubishis, the Fujis, that are on the side of the house that feed air like into like a single vent that will run like on the side of the wall or something like that. And they just, they're ductless. They just come through the wall and they spit out the cold air into that room. And usually that cold air is able to circulate, at least in part, throughout most of the home, okay? Or most of one area of the home. Sometimes you have multiple of those mini split units. So typically people will have them one per floor or one per addition, so that the cool air can reach different areas of the home. But that's the main drawback to a radiator system, is not having air conditioning.
Yeah, interesting.
But the benefit is that people like radiators. People like the heat that they deliver. People like to say, you know, come in from a cold day and put their hat on the radiator, and then when they go out again, the hat's hot or the gloves are dry from the winter. You know, it's you find it in colder climates more than you find it in warmer climates, and we live in a colder climate.
Right. Oh, well, that's all the questions I have. Anything else you can think of, or does that pretty much cover everything you can think of regarding the boiler?
That pretty much covers it. It's always a bit of a treat to do a radiator system with the client. Not so much because radiators are so exciting, but because I like educating my clients on how to take care of them.
Yeah.
Because I find that most people don't know how to take care of the radiator system, even though you do. So if you're looking to buy a home and you're looking for an older home with radiators, or you just like radiators, the look, the feel, and you want someone who's going to be able to assess it and teach you how to use it, give Housemaster a call.
I think that sounds great. So if you have any questions about that or other home inspection, just talk with Michael Schmidt.
Excellent.
Pastor.
Thanks, Lawrence. Really appreciate you giving me a call.
And if you have any other questions about real estate or homes, give me a call. My name is Lawrence Mack, Remax Realtron. Talk to you soon. Bye.